All right, let's go ahead and get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're joining us from today, and welcome to our Introducing CA MRI webcast. Those of you who do not know me, my name is Len Thompson, and I am CA's Mainframe Community Manager. Welcome to the webcast today. Before I hand you off to Spence, just want to quickly let you know, since it looks like most of you are listening to this via the audio broadcast, you will want to use the Q&A box right in the WebEx to ask any questions you might have. If you are on the phone line, I ask that you please stay on mute because we are recording this session. When it comes time for questions, I will let you know how to unmute your line to ask your questions. Feel free to use the Q&A box throughout the session. We will hold questions till the end, and we'll get through as many as we can. If you don't see the Q&A box in the lower right of your screen right now, you should see some circle icons along the bottom of the screen. If you don't see a question mark icon there, hit the icon that has 3 dots on it, which will open up more icons, the icon to get to the icons, and then hit the question mark icon and it'll open up for you in the lower right of your screen. Again, feel free to use that throughout the session and we will address as many questions as we can at the end. And with that little bit of housekeeping out of the way, I'm going to hand you off to Chris Spencer, who's our Senior Principal Product Manager for MRI. Take it away, Spence.
All right, thanks, Len. Good day, everybody. My name is Spence, and I'm the Product Manager, as Len just noted, for Mainframe Resource Intelligence. We're the newest product from the CA Mainframe Solutions team, and actually the first cloud-based offering from our Mainframe business unit. Today, what I thought we'd do is kind of go over what prompted us to come up with a solution, how we designed and built it based on what you, our customers, were telling us, and go through some use cases, showing how customers are or plan on using Mainframe Resource Intelligence. So with that, I'll go ahead and just dive right in. So as we engage customers with our existing products, our existing Mainframe products, we were listening to feedback that they were giving us, and we noticed that there were some common themes, if you will. One of them was that Mainframe operations teams were being asked to do more and more, from supporting new workloads as distributed apps leaned more heavily on Mainframe resources on the back end, not to mention having to create reports, which management was always asking for. But at the end of the day, it was a simple question of prioritization, keeping the lights on or spending time trying to create reports or doing the various and sundry other asks that Mainframe operations teams were being tasked with on a day-to-day basis. You probably can guess which priority always won. It tended to be, well, you know, we would love to be able to do some additional analysis and reporting, but we simply don't have the time, nor do we have the people to do it. Managers actually were coming to us and saying that, you know, they had their own challenges that they were trying to deal with that were kind of unique and special to the Mainframe environment. One was that key personnel were retiring, and new team members often were actually brand new to the Mainframe. There was also a greater desire for transparency. Often the managers would be tasked with executives who actually owned all of IT operations, but may have had limited experience with Mainframe or kind of viewed it as a black box because they really didn't understand it. So being able to provide leadership with insights from the Mainframe was kind of critical to helping them understand the role that Mainframes play and the importance that Mainframes play in today's IT infrastructure. On top of all that, of course, the big item that we kept hearing over and over again was that budgets were always being challenged with cost reduction targets. And sometimes those targets were created without an understanding of how that might impact the ability to provide the services and environment that core applications and capabilities the company relied on needed to function, mainly Mainframe resources. So at a minimum, you know, managers were challenged to provide tangible evidence that their environments and operations were running as lean, as efficiently as possible, and so that they could actually develop and provide information back to executives when it came time to make those budget decisions. So we went and actually talked to executives too, and they said, you know, from my perspective, what I'm really interested in is how I can maximize operational efficiencies, right? Especially in terms of IT operations and infrastructure. Hand in hand with that was also a desire to maximize the return for every dollar invested into IT, and specifically to mainframe. And lastly, they understood that for those executives who were new to mainframe, that they need to better understand mainframe operations. They need to get a better picture, more complete picture, if you will, of the value that mainframe provides to their company. So in talking to all of those individuals, ranging from the SMEs, sysprogs, to the managers of mainframe operations up to the executive level, there were a number of insights that we were compiling, and it actually led us to kind of a fundamental question, which was, how can we provide visibility, better understanding, and insight into our customers' mainframe environments? We had heard time and time again from customers that you have great solutions, but you really don't understand my unique mainframe environment, because each and every one of their mainframe environments was different and unique, sort of like a fingerprint, if you will. And as we thought about it some more, we realized that there are actually interesting parallels between medicine and the challenges that we were seeing in the mainframe environment. So our thinking ended up evolving to looking at how MRIs are done in the medical world versus what we might be able to do in the mainframe world. So in medicine, a patient gets a diagnosis from their doctor and then goes in for a deeper exam like an MRI scan to understand, what's going on with my body and to help identify what might be the root causes for the symptoms they're experiencing. What we needed to do was to do the same for mainframe environments, provide scans and assessments to provide a better understanding of what's going on in the environment, and if we're lucky, give us some clues to any issues that it might be experiencing. With MRIs, clinical experience is leveraged to come up with deeper recommendations, and based on the collective experience of the medical community, and with MRIs in particular, with the specific experience of the radiologist, right? We wanted to leverage CA's decades of experience in the mainframe, especially in tackling tough, difficult to resolve issues with our collective knowledge, but also use the expertise of our numerous SMEs. So based on all of that, for an MRI, a radiologist, basically ends up creating a report for the doctor, a radiologist report, highlighting the findings from the MRI scan. And for us, that meant we needed to provide a solution that does the same for mainframes, a report that can then be used by SMEs and sysprogs to better understand what might be causing issues and what might be some recommendations for not just resolving them, but also even optimizing and making the environment even more efficient. So those were our initial goals. As we started developing the solution, we actually worked with customers hand in hand to understand what their requirements would be for whatever solution we came up with. And it kind of boiled down to, at a high level, these three basic requirements, right? So the solution had to be lightweight. The last thing customers wanted was an application that would eat up the very mainframe resources they were trying to reduce cost for. And we're not just talking about, machine resources too. We're also talking about the time and effort of its SMEs and sysprogs to use the tool. It had to be intuitive, not only to help with new team members who might be new to the mainframe and helping them become effective contributors, but also the more intuitive it was to use, the lower the ask in terms of time for the SMEs who would actually be using the tool too. So more intuitive means faster, means quicker. Speaking of fast and quick, well, it also had to provide results more quickly than customers were able to achieve today. Time is money, as we all know, and if we could save them time, then the value of our solution would be even more compelling, right? And it had to kind of, most importantly, provide tangible, actionable findings and recommendations. So in other words, customers wanted not just an analysis, but also kind of a guide to realizing the benefits of that analysis and possible ways that they might be able to reduce costs and optimize their mainframe environments. So we took all that information and we developed a solution, right? That's what has led to what we have today, CA's Mainframe Resource Intelligence. It's a cloud-based analytics and assessment offering, and it's designed to provide deep and advanced analytics, surfacing up insights and an understanding of mainframe environments, which previously would be either unavailable or be too costly to obtain. And the idea is that we will provide, on top of that, clear and compelling findings and recommendations with specific actions that customers can implement. Some advantages, you might be asking, well, wait a second, this is a mainframe solution, why are you basing it in the cloud? Well, it kind of goes back to some of those requirements that customers gave us at the beginning. They wanted it to be lightweight. With a cloud offering, there is minimal maintenance, if any, and there's very little installation required, right? So without maintenance, without installation, you're talking about almost the very definition of lightweight. They also wanted no impact on resource consumption, and the cloud gave us that ability, right? So rather than doing the analysis on the machine itself, instead, we do the heavy lift in the cloud. And by the way, CA is responsible for the cost that incurs, right? And the resources that is required to run that analysis. It also allows us to provide an interface that's quick, simple, and easy to use. It's a web application, and because of that, we're able to take advantage of web technologies to enhance that user experience. And probably most importantly, being a cloud application allows us to really embrace continuous delivery, right? We knew we'd be constantly updating and improving our assessments. And as a cloud solution, as soon as we push those updates into our cloud environment, those enhanced capabilities and features are instantly available to every customer and without a need to ever deploy a PTF, right? That's kind of the reason why we went the cloud route. We get that question quite often, so I want to go ahead and kind of lay out the reasoning behind making that decision. So how does it work? Well, at a high level, we really have kind of 3 stages in conducting our assessments. First, we work with the customer to scan their environment. This scan is conducted using a very simple toolkit that even an inexperienced operation team member can run. It gathers the data that we need to use to conduct the analysis. And then once that data is uploaded to MRI, we then use that information. We have proprietary algorithms, analysis that's done by actual CA analysts themselves. And of course, with all the experience that CA brings to the table, to create insights that we then service with a report, right? And that report is kind of the end deliverable for the customer. So these reports, they can be generated in some cases in seconds, in some cases days. It kind of depends on the type of assessment that's being conducted. So I mentioned that, we would look into ways customers are or planning to use CA Mainframe Resource Intelligence. I thought I'd kind of go through some of that with you right now. We've been working with customers at the early phases of MRI and engaging with them. Part of our development process with MRI is pulling customers into the process of the development cycle. And we were working with Dollar Bank as well as a number of other customers, trying to make sure that, one, we met their requirements, but also kind of understood what the business value that they were seeing in the product. And Dollar Bank was a pretty big proponent of what we were doing. They saw a lot of value because they actually have a pretty interesting case here. Dollar Bank is a regional bank based in the U.S., and their challenge is that they're growing. And what that means is they're actually acquiring other banks, and that means they're acquiring other mainframe environments, right? Existing mainframe environments. So they have a need to kind of understand those environments so that they can understand how they can optimize the integrated environment that they're going to end up with once the acquisition is done. As we all know that, one of the greatest causes of failures for acquisitions is when cost controls kind of spiral out of control based on a failed integration attempt. So what specifically were they looking at? Well, one of the things they wanted to be able to do was to scan the mainframe environments of the acquisition to understand what assets were deployed, whether it be hardware assets or software assets. So the challenge was, often the records of those assets may be incomplete. On top of that, the individuals who would know the environment the most may no longer be with the company and available. So the ability to do an assessment very quickly to generate an initial asset inventory with minimal effort, by the way, and foreknowledge of the environment was incredibly important to Dollar. So again, beyond hardware, software was also key. So understanding what software was deployed allowed Dollar to identify duplicate licenses, understand which applications were critical to the operations of the acquired company, for instance, and which vendors that they would need to engage to transfer the licenses, not to mention support services. So our software assessment basically gave Dollar a great place to start, detecting hundreds of mainframe applications that may be deployed. And on top of that, understanding any ongoing issues which the acquired company's environment might be experiencing could be extremely critical in understanding potential challenges and even blockers to integration efforts. So our health assessment provides a prioritized list of exceptions that the mainframe environment is experiencing, as well as comprehensive information about each exception, including details on that exception, what caused it, and how to remediate it from the system operations and SME sysprog level. And those assessments actually weren't just valuable for Dollar's admittedly unique needs. We heard from customer after customer about the need to comply with internal audits, for instance, usually in the form of an annual audit. And the challenge was, how do we do that without sidelighting our key team members, who, by the way, happen to be the team members who understand the assets the most? They tend to be the most experienced and thus the most expensive. And so sidelining them for a week or so could be problematic. To add insult to injury, doing these audit compliance efforts, getting asset inventories compiled was very manual and time intensive. A week of time was simply too valuable to spend on what amounted to be record keeping for them. In fact, when we talked to one customer in particular, they supplied us information on how much time it took them to do an audit or to provide the information for an internal audit. And we took a look at that information. We compared it to how fast MRI could provide information to get them started. And it turned out that we could demonstrably save them about 80% of their effort and time by using MRI. So understanding assets deployed and what exceptions might be occurring in an environment just kind of scratches the surface of the value that Mainframe Resource Intelligence can provide your mainframe operations. One of the other key needs that we identified with customers is the ability to optimize their capacity utilization. Capacity being a driver for a significant portion of the typical mainframe environment spend. So understanding opportunities to reduce capacity, it was key to most cost reduction efforts. In the case of this particular customer, they were faced with many of the challenges I outlined at the start of the call, doing more with less, reducing their total cost of ownership, but doing so in a way that also didn't endanger keeping the lights on and meeting their SLAs, right? So we developed an assessment called our capacity optimization assessment that was designed to identify key opportunities to reduce capacity by either moving workloads off peak hours, offloading workloads to specialty engines, and even potentially identifying capping issues and how that might be remediated. As we develop the capacity optimization assessment, which is kind of a deep dive, by the way, we have special analysts who go in and will look at a mainframe environment and come up with specific recommendations for that specific unique environment. As we worked with customers on the capacity optimization assessment, our pilot customers actually started telling us that, you know, this is great, but we also need something on top of that. We need a way to have visibility and understanding of key metrics, key capacity metrics over time, and we would love to have a report that does that for us. Why do they want that? Well, one, baseline data for trend lining and projections. So when they're trying to do capacity planning, that kind of information is key and valuable. But also, it's a way for them to keep an eye on the very efforts that they'd be undertaking based on the recommendations that we would make with our capacity optimization assessment. So this was actually an offering that was developed based directly off of customer feedback and raising that need to us. So those are some of the ways Mainframe Resource Intelligence can actually help you as of today. But we're working on much more. We hope to have our executive report ready and available by the end of this calendar year. That executive report will provide an overview and synopsis of ways in which mainframe environments can be optimized and potential cost reductions. It is designed for executives, so there's a executive summary that can actually be handed to an executive that goes towards the value props that executives are most interested in. However, we also include all the details that build up to those value props. So how do you realize a 10% MLC reduction? Well, we include all the details on implementing actions to realize those benefits. Another thing that we're looking into, and actually are actively working on, is a security essentials assessment. This security essentials assessment will be looking at ACF2, top secret, and RACF configurations and settings, comparing them to security best practices, and giving you a report, essentially, that identifies any potential issues with recommendations as to settings and configurations that would adhere to security best practices. We're also looking at AI and machine learning enhancements to surface up non-obvious and deep insights that otherwise might be very difficult to surface, to show relationships between parameters and settings and mainframe assets that might have a relationship to each other that would impact on how you'd want to go about implementing some of our recommendations and findings. Performance benchmarking, another thing that customers have told us they're very interested in. So can you provide me a before and after snapshot of when I'm going to be deploying either an update or installing a new product? Also, we've had some interest in performance benchmarking against peers. So how does my mainframe environment perform against an idealized environment that is represents my specific unique mainframe environment? And of course, we're going to be doing continuous enhancements to existing offerings. We're constantly updating our data and our back-end systems that these offerings are actually built on. So with that, I will wrap it up and say, first of all, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. We know your time is valuable to you, and for that reason, it's also valuable to us. We appreciate the opportunity to kind of go over what we've done with CA Mainframe Resource Intelligence, why we're excited about it, and how we think it will be helpful as we try to address that age-old question of how do we understand in a more in-depth way what's actually going on in the mainframe environment, and what are the best ways of going about trying to realize some cost savings and optimization efforts in those environments. And so we invite you to reach out to us. If you'd like to talk to us and engage with us one-on-one, by all means, feel free. You can reach us at mri@ca.com. If you'd like to get some more information, you can head over to our website, ca.com/MRI. And with that, I'll say thanks again and open it up for any questions you might have. So Len, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thanks, Spence. Appreciate it. Great job as always. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but if you are on the phone line, at this point you can please feel free to hit #6 to unmute your line and ask any questions. And also, just as a reminder, I am recording this session, so we'll be getting this replay out in the community as soon as possible. And Spence, if you wouldn't mind sharing your actually, I think you sent the final deck yesterday, so I'll also post that out in the community.
Great, sounds good.
We'll give everyone a minute here. All right, I don't see any questions coming in, and I don't hear any questions coming in. So we can probably go ahead and wrap. Spence, thanks very much. And as he said, thank you to everyone for taking the time out of their busy day to join us and take part in this presentation. We will see you next time. Thanks very much.
Take care, all.